In this video, I'm going to give you my honest opinion about the tools from Filmverse. I got these 3 clips here, 1, 2, 3, and I grouped them. They were all shot on Arri. And then first things first, on the timeline, I have my Omniscope. And then what I like to do is use this mono border DCTL just to add there. It gives me a really good idea of what my look is going to be viewed as if it goes on YouTube, because there's white borders everywhere. I really like using this tool. I reached out to Filmverse. They sent me 5 different DCTLs that they have. I'm not being paid for this at all. They wanted to make sure if I do review it, it's an honest review, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. We're going to break it up in 2 categories. I have 2 DCTLs that's texture based, and then another like 3 DCTLs that's more look based. Let's start with Filmverse Lite 1.4. Out of all the 3 DCTLs that has to do with looks, I honestly like this one the most. Color space is Arri log C and Rec 709 gamma 2.2 because it's going to web. Firstly, I have to make sure my input gamma is correct. And let's see what it does to the image. So it's pretty contrasty, but I do like what the colors are doing. As far as I understand, this DCTL is applying curve like what your CST would do, and then also adding a look on top. So if I disable this look, I'm assuming this is a pretty straightforward Arri to Rec 709 CST. And then when I add the look, this is what happens. From here, I can adjust the color finish. So it's kind of saturation, and then play around with the densities. How I would do this though, is I'd make a pre-node here. Because I can't control contrast or anything like that in this DCTL, I'd do it here. And maybe it's a bit too contrasty for me. Maybe let's bring it down a bit, kind of here. So we went from Rec 709 to here. I really like what it's doing to the face. The color of the face looks really nice. Let's see if it works on the other shots. It's kind of nice. It's maybe the color finish. Let's just pull it back a bit. Okay, but that's nice. Like, I really like what it's doing to the image. Just see here. Obviously play around with the densities. I would not go too crazy with the blue density. Like, it looks good, but blue in general, when you start playing with the density, it can break easily. So that's not great, but you can fine tune it here. So I'm a fan of this guy. It's nice and easy. It's simple. It's not 100 type of sliders that you need to understand and you don't really know what they're doing. Let me just rename that. Kind of a nice look. I really like this one. I definitely use this in project. The benefit about this DCTL, which I like, is you can change the input gamma. So if you're working in DaVinci or Arri or whatever, you can change that, which is cool. It's very easy to understand. I can even switch between the look and what it looks like Rec 709, which I really like. Things that I would like to see is when I go global blend here, it blends the entire look with the Rec 709. So it blends this and this to 0. So it goes back to like what it was shot in camera, like raw. I'd love to see this blend actually just affect the look, so that if I go down on the global blend, it's actually blending the look with this. So I can just add a little bit of the look to the Rec 709 compared to now. If I want to blend it, it actually reverts it back to raw. So that's one thing I'd like to see added here. Obviously, this only gives you one type of look, and we're going to talk about other DCTLs that they have that's more expensive, that you can have more looks. So I can't really say that I'd like to see an improvement on more looks because they have it in different DCTLs. I really like this one. This is honestly one of my favorite ones. Let's look at Filmverse Pro 2.1. Let's reset everything. DCTL Pro. Now you get tons of stuff to look at. Straight off the bat, which is unfortunate, you see here it has no input gamma or gamut. This tool, Filmverse Pro 2.1, you have to work in DaVinci Resolve gamut. So that's a problem because I'm working in Arri. And now what I have to do is to go to my pre-clips, I have to add color space transform, and I have to move Arri to DaVinci Resolve gamut. Now this is probably not a problem for anyone always working in DaVinci Resolve gamut, but I actually tend to work in Arri. Now that we've changed it to DaVinci Resolve gamut, this should start working. The input it's taking in is DaVinci Resolve gamut, and it's pushing out this DaVinci Resolve gamut. So we need an extra step here. We will do color space transform, and then we'll go DaVinci Resolve gamut Got a Rec 709, 2.2. Then we also have to make sure that our timeline color space is DaVinci Wide Gamut. So if you're going to use this tool, you have to work in DaVinci Wide Gamut. If we turn this on and off, so that's Rec 709. This is the look it's applying. And then from here, you have tons of controls. Your input mid-gray, I like that. The skin hue, I like that they have things that isolate the skin. Highlights down, maybe push the shadows up a bit. Okay, so the split curve has to do with the film stock. So you can choose between 2 film stocks and 3 print films. So let's see what the difference is. Okay, let's just stick with the good old 2338. I want to see if I can create something that like looks good. So saturation, I'm assuming this is just normal saturation, and film saturation is subtractive saturation. How I'd use this as well is a node before, deal with contrast. If it's too contrasty, just kind of bring it there. Let's see what this looks like on and off. Does a pretty strong look. Then we can also play with the densities. Like I said before, just watch out for it to break. And then when I reduce contrast, I'll increase saturation and like something like that. Let's see, 09 to here. Okay, it's definitely moving in the right direction. There we go. This is what I like. Now this blend is actually blending it from the Rec 709, like normal transfer, to the look. So even if you create an intense look, it's always good to go down to the blend and just add it a little bit and then find that little balance that you like. So I think this is acceptable. I like that you have all these controls, which is really cool. I like that you have saturation and film saturation. It's nice that you can choose between the film stocks. I like the blend, that it actually doesn't add, it's like second CST like the light does. What would I change here? It's too bad that the contrast, you know, the temperature and the tint, it's not included in here. You have to do it in a node before. But I have a feeling that the most expensive DCTL has all of those things. Negatives, it sucks that I have to work in DaVinci Wide Gamut. So I can't work in ARRI, which I usually do. But if you work in DaVinci Wide Gamut, color space, it doesn't really matter. Also, one thing is like, it's nothing wrong with the tool itself. There are just like so many controls here. I'm sure on the website somewhere, it'll explain exactly what each of these sliders do. Another thing that would be really cool to see is, so now you see this look, right? And then you have this second CST, right? You have this and this. It would be nice if there was a setting here that I could disable the look, but I could use these controls on the Rec 709 image. Or when I blend this, I'm blending this entire thing with the Rec 709. I'd like to see a global blend of just the stocks and the film, but not the controls that I changed. So just the film stock and the print film, I want to be able to independently global blend and then leave this alone. I think that'll be kind of nice just to really fine tune my look. But I think this is kind of nice. All in all, I do really like this Filmverse Pro 2.1. Let's look at the Arsenal. Okay, so this is the big boy. I think this is the most expensive one. And what does it do? So this makes sense. This is the most expensive one. You can actually change the input gamma and the gamut. So now you can do ARRI log C if you wanted to. So that's, now I understand. They didn't put it in the Pro so that if you do want that feature, you have to get the Arsenal. That makes sense. Okay, so there's another million stuff here. Change all of this because we're going to work in ARRI. Okay, so we're going to do this. Okay, now that we are on the right spot, now we can adjust exposure here, contrast. This is nice. I really like that these tools are in here. You have saturation. Do you also have film saturation? Yes, you do. Nice. Okay, so you have saturation here, filmic sat, skin saturation. To me, these controls, I understand them way more than the Pro. The Pro kind of confuses me a bit of like what actually the things do, but this is pretty straightforward, which I really like. I also like that everything is in one spot. I don't have to create pre-nodes and stuff like that. I can just really hone in the look here. And these are the stocks that we're going to use. Okay, so you have a lot to choose from. You have way more than the Pro, which makes sense. And then preview. Okay, so it actually gives you 3 different types of print stocks, what it would look like, and you can choose which one you want. D55, 60, or let's go middle. Cool, I like. Yeah, I really like these controls compared to the Pro. Oh, you got a bit of roll off here. We can play with bleach bypass, cool. Global blend, but is it gonna push back to, yeah. So it has the same type of issue. I wish it could global blend back to Rec 709 instead of like going back to raw. So that's one thing I'd change. It would be cool if it had a type of check mark that I can see what this is doing to the S-curve. So it just has like an overlay of my contrast. And maybe even adding like a pivot in here would be nice. But this one's good though. I really like what it's doing to the image. I think it looks really nice and it gives you a lot of control. But this one is the most expensive one I know. So those are the 3 Filmverses, 1, 2, 3. If I had cash and I wanted to buy one, I didn't have a lot of cash, I would probably buy the Lite. If I had to choose between the Pro and the Arsenal, I'd go Arsenal. I'm not entirely sure what the price difference is, but I think you kind of need the Arsenal. Well, I would definitely. So I'd probably pick between these two. Okay, let's look at the texture, because that's actually the thing why I reached out to them, because they have these texture tools I think are really good, because it really pushes it into that filmic cinematic type of filmy feel. Let's go back to the Lite. Airy, and then we go here. Let's change the contrast. Add a bit of density, add a bit of saturation. Yeah, you need to be able to separate the two. That's unfortunate. Let's just for this example, because I want to show you something with texture. Now that you are here, and let's say you are happy with your look, right? You're like, cool, this looks good. Now this guy, we're going to do type B first. I'm going to zoom in here, show you what it does. This texture DCTL concentrates on grain, halation, and softness. And for me, the most important thing is the softness. So I think the grain is really good. You know, you have the amount, the size, the detail. You can really control it, which is nice. The halation size and the color. Okay, let's just over exaggerate it. You can see it in her cheeks here. I think the grain tool itself is good. The halation, it also does a really good job. Like you can see here, like down here. And then obviously you can change the color. I like to do monochrome grain. I don't want to introduce like chromatic grain to my image. And then you can play around here. The main thing I want to talk about is this overall softness thing. Like this is the thing why I'd use this tool. And it's so subtle, but it's very difficult to explain. I made a video about edge detect, where you soften the edges of your footage so that it feels more organic. And this does it, but better. I want you to look here at her eyes. I'm going to remove the grain completely. Do you see the softness it introduces? This thing makes it feel incredibly filmic. And it's so subtle, but it makes such a big difference. Like I'd buy this thing just for this overall softness. If you want to add grain and stuff like that, you can, obviously. I actually tend to these days to add a bit of grain, but I find that it's very distracting. Like you can see like dancing pixels here. What I tend to do these days is actually just use the grain from Resolve, add grain, and actually just freeze it. So I just add a little bit of grain. If let's say I denoised it before, right, to get rid of noise, I grade my thing, and then I add a bit of grain and freeze it so that it actually adds texture back into my shot. Why I'm talking about this is that it would be awesome if they could add that here. If there's a freeze grain thing in here, I think it would definitely benefit this tool. That softness though, next level. Just look at the face there. Let's look at the type A. I'm actually going to create a new node. And I'm going to talk about the same thing because it has different types of tools that you can manipulate your image. And it actually has a different type of softness. Let's change that to type A. And I'm going to remove this guy and see what this does. Okay, so it has the same type of tools, but more in depth in grain. So you can go crazy with this stuff, right? I mean, you can, the grain radius, the grains in reds and blues. This is just up to what you think is good. But like I said, I mainly focus just on the softness of these tools. Because I mean, the halation and the size, do whatever you want. The softness though, get the face, the more you go, the softer it gets. Obviously it gets super blurry, which is too much. If you go here, okay, let's just, the halation is going crazy here. So let's just remove the halation. I just want to focus on the softness. And let's see the softness here. I like this does, however, give you a different softness than this softness. So it really depends on what type of softness you like. This softness is kind of like a subtle softness, which I think is a perfect amount of softness. The problem though is you kind of capped. If you want to go more, you can't. Unless you potentially add another node and just copy that one over. This should work. And you can make it even softer. So you can start stacking it like that if you want to. But in an ideal world, you don't want to. Or you can go for the type A, which is a different type of softness. And I'm kind of going back and forth which one I like the most. I actually don't know. Like, I thought I liked type B the most because like a perfect amount. But the more I play with type A, the more I kind of like this one. And this type of texture, DCTL, I think is critical if you want like a cinematic filmic type of feel. It makes it feel way more organic. The same, like I said, for the texture type B, it would be awesome if there was like a freeze grain here. But that's just like for me. I don't even know if people use that. I just like reintroducing texture without having dancing grain everywhere. So to summarize, which tools would I use? I definitely use these texture tools. Question is which one? I'd probably gravitate more towards type A because it just gives you more softness than type B. Out of all the DCTLs, it obviously depends on your budget and what you want to do. The Arsenal is the big boy, which will give you the most flexibility. So if you have money, I would say the Arsenal is the one to go for. If you don't have a lot of cash, I really like what the Lite does. Would I buy the Pro? I'd probably save up and buy the Arsenal if I had enough money for the Pro. And that's my review of the tools of Filmverse. If you want to go check out these DCTLs, I'll put a link to their website at the bottom of this video. Like I said, I'm not making any money off of it. So have a look and decide for yourself if it's worth it.